They fired me at 9:15 a.m. on a Tuesday. By 10:45, they were practically begging me to come back. Look, I'm Bill Patterson, 52 years old, and I thought I'd seen everything in my 19 years as chief financial officer at Lawson Energy. But nothing prepared me for walking into that conference room thinking it was going to be the biggest day of my career, only to get kicked out before the show even started. So there I was, Tuesday morning, walking into what should have been our moment of glory. We're talking about a $2.1 billion Pentagon contract, the kind of deal that sets you up for life and puts your company on the map permanently. I'd spent the last 4 years making sure every single detail was bulletproof because, when Uncle Sam writes checks that big, they want to make sure you're not going to screw it up. The conference room looked like something out of a movie. Polished mahogany table, leather chairs, cameras set up to capture what everybody assumed would be historic. All the big shots were there. Pentagon officials, investors with more money than some small countries, attorneys with briefcases that probably cost more than most people's cars. The whole 9 yards. I'm looking around, feeling pretty good about things, when Catherine Lawson steps right into my path. Kate, as she likes everyone to call her, inherited the CEO job about 18 months ago when her grandfather died. She's 40, sharp as a tack, but let's just say she got the corner office the old-fashioned way. Family connections. Bill, she says, and I can tell right away something's wrong. Her voice has that tone, the one your boss uses when they're about to ruin your day. Your services are no longer needed here. Please hand over your badge. I'm thinking, did she just say what I think she said? I'm sorry, what now? I ask. Because honestly, my brain couldn't process what was happening. This is the biggest signing in company history, the deal I've been structuring for years. And she's firing me? Right now? You heard me correctly. Security will escort you out. She's got this smile plastered on her face like we're discussing the weather, but her eyes are cold as winter in North Dakota. That's when I notice Brian Hoffman from HR lurking behind her like a faithful dog. Brian's one of those guys who's never met a company policy he didn't love, especially when it means he doesn't have to think for himself. He's holding a manila folder against his chest like it's some kind of shield. The whole room goes quiet. And I mean dead quiet. Every conversation stops, every paper shuffle ends, even the camera guys pause what they're doing to watch the show. Here I am, getting fired in front of the Pentagon, major investors, and God knows who else. The worst part? I see Tom Andrews sitting at the far end of the table, suddenly very interested in his paperwork. Tom and I go way back. I've been mentoring this guy for 10 years, helped him through every major crisis he's faced. Used to call me at all hours asking for advice. Now he can't even look at me. Then somebody snickers. One of the young analysts by the wall didn't catch himself in time. Just a quick laugh, but in that dead silent room it might as well have been a foghorn. The humiliation hits me like a brick to the face. I look at Kate, this woman who's never had to earn anything in her life, who got handed a multi-billion-dollar company because she happened to be born into the right family. She's already turning away from me, dismissing me like I'm furniture being removed. You know what? I don't say a word. What's the point? Instead, I take my badge, this little piece of plastic that represented 19 years of my life, and I set it down on that polished table. The metal hits wood with this little click that somehow sounds louder than it should. Then I walk out, just like that, carrying nothing but whatever dignity I've got left and this weird feeling that they have no idea what they just did. The hallway felt different as I walked through it. You know how a place can feel when you know you're seeing it for the last time? All those framed photos on the walls, ribbon cuttings, award ceremonies, team pictures from successful projects. I'm in about half of them, usually standing in the background while other people smile for the cameras. There's this one photo from when we landed our first major government contract. I'd spent 6 months restructuring our financial systems to meet federal requirements, working nights and weekends to get everything perfect. Kate's grandfather posed with the Pentagon officials while I watched from the sidelines, just another guy in a suit. Anyway, I keep walking past all these awards and magazine covers calling us Energy Innovators of the Year. Every single achievement on that wall had my fingerprints on it, but you'd never know it from looking at the pictures. I pass Amanda Wells at the reception desk. She's 24, just out of college, reminds me a lot of my son Michael. I've been mentoring her, teaching her the ropes, trying to help her avoid the mistakes I made when I was starting out. Her eyes go wide when she sees me walking toward the exit during the biggest meeting of the year. She starts to say something, probably wondering why I'm leaving. But her supervisor shoots her a look that could freeze hell over. The message is crystal clear. Keep your mouth shut, or you're next. Amanda's mouth snaps closed, and she looks down at her desk. I don't blame her one bit. She's got student loans and a career to think about. I push through those glass doors into the morning air. The city's waking up, traffic building, people rushing to jobs where they hopefully feel more secure than I do right now. For a minute, I just stand there on the sidewalk, looking back at this building that's been my second home for nearly 2 decades. Here's the thing, though. When you're a CFO with a Navy background, you learn to plan ahead. You learn that details matter, that the fine print can save your bacon. And you learn that sometimes the most important words are the ones nobody bothers to read until it's too late. 4 years ago, I was working late on the Pentagon contract framework. It was mine and Sarah's 21st wedding anniversary, and she'd made reservations at this little Italian place where we had our first date. I was supposed to meet her at 7 o'clock. By 8 o'clock, she's calling asking if I'm on my way. By 9 o'clock, she stops calling. I stayed at that office until past midnight, working on the compliance requirements that would protect both the company and the taxpayers' money. Sarah was asleep when I got home, the dining room table still set with cold pasta and burned-down candles. She never said anything about it the next morning, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes. That was Sarah. She understood that my work mattered, even when it meant missing the moments that mattered to her. When the cancer took her 2 years later, I made myself a promise that I'd never let work consume me like that again. But here I was, still putting the company first, and look where it got me. That night I'd been drafting what we called Clause 63 of the Pentagon Compliance Framework. Most executives would flip right past it, buried deep in all that legal language that makes your eyes glaze over. But here's what I learned in the Navy. The details that bore you to death are usually the ones that save your life. For any contractual instrument exceeding $2 billion with federal oversight, I wrote, final execution requires attestation from the original financial architect of record. Then I added my name and signature requirements. Seemed like standard procedure at the time. Just another safeguard in a document full of safeguards. Kate and her team laughed about it during the review meetings. Who's going to read all the way to Clause 63, one of the junior lawyers said. It's just paperwork, Bill. Nobody's got time for this stuff. I kept quiet then, same as I did this morning when they escorted me out. But I knew something they didn't. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is the one your enemy doesn't know you have. So anyway, I find this coffee shop across the street from Lawson Energy and order a black coffee. Old military habit, I guess. The place has a perfect view of our building, and more importantly, it's got a TV mounted in the corner showing the business news channel. They're already talking about the signing ceremony, calling it the deal that will reshape America's energy future. The coverage cuts to live footage from our conference room. There's Kate, sitting in what used to be my chair, looking confident and polished for the cameras. The caption under her name reads, CEO Catherine Lawson, with no mention of the financial team that made this whole thing possible. Same old story. I'm sipping my coffee, watching the show, when I notice something's off. The investors look good, the attorneys have their papers ready. Kate's working the room like she was born for this. The cameras love her. Young, articulate, the perfect face for American innovation. Never mind that she inherited the company and has about as much experience running a major energy operation as my son Michael, who's still a junior at State. The contract signing starts with all the usual ceremony. Kate makes this speech about Lawson Energy's commitment to American energy independence, innovation, partnership with the federal government. She thanks the Pentagon officials, the investors, even mentions the catering staff. But no word about the financial team that structured the deal, nothing about the compliance framework that made it legally possible. Then comes the moment everyone's waiting for. Kate picks up this gold Mont Blanc pen, the same one her grandfather used for major signings, and gets ready to sign the first page with a big flourish. The cameras are clicking away, capturing every angle of what's supposed to be her crowning moment. But something's wrong. I can see it in how the attorneys are moving. They're flipping through their copies faster than they should be, and one of the Pentagon lawyers is frowning at something in his packet. You know that feeling when you can tell something's about to go sideways? That's when it happens. James Caldwell, this young associate from our legal team, speaks up. His voice carries clearly through the room, and the TV cameras catch every word. "Excuse me, but there's an issue with Clause 63. The room goes dead quiet. Kate's pen freezes halfway to the paper. You could hear a pin drop. "What kind of issue?" Kate asks, and for the first time all morning, that confidence of hers starts to crack. Caldwell clears his throat like he'd rather be anywhere else. The clause requires attestation from William Patterson for any federal contract exceeding $2 billion. Without his signature, the contract isn't legally binding. I nearly spit out my coffee. There it was, printed in black and white on every single copy. My name, my requirement, my little safeguard that nobody bothered to remember because it was buried in the fine print where nobody looks. The conference room explodes. Kate's face goes from confident to confused to furious in about 3 seconds flat. The Pentagon officials start whispering among themselves in that way that tells you someone's about to get their butt chewed. The investors look like they just watched their money disappear into thin air. "Where is Mr. Patterson?" one of the federal representatives asks, and his tone suggests this better have a good answer. That's when poor Brian Hoffman has to explain, in front of God and everybody, that they fired me 50 minutes earlier, right before the signing, on live television, no less. I can't help but grin as I watch Kate try to recover. She's talking fast, making gestures, clearly trying to convince everyone that they can work around the clause somehow. But here's the thing about the Pentagon: they don't work around compliance requirements, especially not for $2.1 billion of taxpayer money. The investors are already pushing back from the table. These aren't small-time players we're talking about. They're representing sovereign wealth funds, pension plans, institutional money that doesn't mess around with legally questionable deals. One of the European representatives stands up, and when he talks, his accent makes every word sound final. Without proper compliance attestation, we cannot proceed. This is not negotiable. Kate looks around the room like she's drowning, probably realizing for the first time that she just torpedoed the biggest deal in company history. The cameras are still rolling, broadcasting her meltdown to anyone watching business news that morning. You know what's really something? Watching someone discover that all those details they ignored actually matter. Kate's probably thinking right now about all those meetings where she rolled her eyes when I talked about compliance requirements, all those times she said we were overthinking things. That's when someone, I think it was Brian, suggests they find me and bring me back. Kate's assistant runs out of the room like her hair's on fire, then comes back a few minutes later shaking her head. Security reports that I've left the building. My badge is deactivated. I'm gone. I finish my coffee and watch Kate try to salvage the situation for another 20 minutes before the Pentagon officials call a recess. The investors file out looking like someone just told them their retirement funds evaporated. The cameras capture it all. The complete collapse of what should have been a triumphant moment. My phone starts buzzing around then. First call is from Tom Andrews, suddenly remembering we're colleagues after pretending I didn't exist during my dismissal. Then Brian Hoffman from HR. Then Kate herself. I turn the phone off and order another coffee. Let them sweat for a while. About an hour later, I see Kate come charging out of the building. She's moving fast, scanning the street like a hunter tracking wounded prey. When she spots the coffee shop, she heads straight for it like a guided missile. She bursts through the door, and her perfect composure is completely shot. Her hair's messed up, her makeup's smudged, and she's got that wild look people get when their whole world's falling apart in real time. "Bill," she says, loud enough for half the coffee shop to hear. "We need to talk. Right now." I look up from my newspaper like I'm surprised to see her. "Kate, how'd the signing go?" Her face turns red. "You know exactly how it went. We need you to come back and sign that contract. Sorry, I'm not an employee anymore. Remember? You fired me about an hour and a half ago. That was a mistake, a misunderstanding. We can fix this." I fold my newspaper and really look at her. This woman who inherited everything, who never had to earn respect or prove herself, is now begging me to save her deal. A misunderstanding? You fired me in front of the entire room, Kate. In front of the cameras, the Pentagon, everybody. You had security ready to escort me out. We can work something out. Name your terms. That's when I realize she still doesn't get it. She thinks this is about money, about position, about some negotiation she can win with the right offer. She doesn't understand that this is about 19 years of being invisible, 19 years of building something just to watch other people take credit for it. "You want to know what my terms are?" I ask, standing up and putting on my jacket. "My terms are that I'm done. Retired as of this morning. I've got enough saved up to be comfortable, my son's college tuition is covered, and I'm finished with this whole business. Kate's eyes go wide like I just told her the building was on fire. You can't do this. The contract will survive without me, Kate. You'll just have to find another way to structure it. Might take a few months, maybe a year, to get all the government paperwork sorted out. Of course, by then your investors might have found other opportunities. I start walking toward the door, and she follows me like a lost puppy. Bill, please. I'm sorry about this morning. I was under pressure from the board. They thought we needed fresh leadership for the signing. Fresh leadership? You thought what? That you could just erase 19 years of institutional knowledge? That financial compliance is something you can farm out to the lowest bidder? I stop at the door and turn back to her. You know what the funny thing is, Kate? I actually wanted this deal to succeed. I spent 4 years making sure every detail was perfect because I believed in what we were building. But you threw that away for what? Office politics? Some power play to look good for the board? She's quiet for a moment, and I can see her brain working overtime trying to figure out how to fix this mess. But some things can't be fixed with smooth talk and family connections. What if we made you a partner? She says finally. Full equity stake, seat on the board, whatever you want. I almost feel sorry for her then. She's offering me everything I wanted for years, but only because she needs something from me. It's like getting a birthday present from someone who forgot your birthday until they needed a favor. Thanks, but no thanks. I've got a better offer coming. That was actually true. While I'd been sitting there drinking coffee and watching her world fall apart, my phone had been buzzing with calls from headhunters. Word travels fast in this business, and apparently a CFO who can navigate Pentagon compliance requirements is worth recruiting, especially when there's dramatic footage of your former employer imploding on live TV. The best call came from Patricia Adams at Adams Energy, Lawson's biggest competitor. She didn't just want me as an employee, she wanted me to head up their new federal contracts division. More money than I'd ever made, better benefits, and most importantly, a chance to start over somewhere that valued experience over inheritance. I left Kate standing in that coffee shop and walked away. For the first time in 19 years, I wasn't rushing to solve someone else's crisis. I wasn't staying late to fix a problem that other people created. I was just walking down the street, unemployed and surprisingly okay with it. The news broke online before I even got home. Lawson Energy deal collapses over compliance issue. CEO fires key financial officer hours before $2.1 billion signing. The headlines practically wrote themselves. By evening, the story had legs. Business reporters were digging into the background, trying to understand how a major corporation could make such a basic mistake. They found my Navy service record, my 19 years at Lawson, the projects I'd led that nobody knew about. Suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore. The phone rang all evening, reporters wanting interviews, headhunters with job offers, even a few old Navy buddies who'd seen the news and wanted to catch up. Michael called from college, laughing about seeing his dad's name trending on business Twitter. Dad, they're calling you a compliance genius on CNBC. Mom would have gotten such a kick out of this. That hit me harder than anything else that day. Sarah always knew I was good at what I did, even when nobody else seemed to notice. She understood why the details mattered, why I stayed late to get things right. She would have loved watching Kate panic on live television, probably would have made popcorn for the show. I spent that evening reading through the Adams Energy offer and thinking about what came next. For 19 years, I'd defined myself by my work at Lawson Energy. I'd poured everything into building something that someone else could take credit for. Now I had a chance to build something new, somewhere that people understood what experience was worth. The next morning brought more news, and none of it was good for Lawson. Their stock dropped 8% overnight. Not catastrophic, but enough to get the board's attention. The Pentagon formally suspended contract negotiations pending resolution of the compliance issues. 3 major investors pulled out of the deal entirely. Kate held a press conference trying to control the damage, but you could tell she was in over her head. She announced that they were reviewing personnel decisions and committed to resolving all outstanding issues, but everyone watching could see she was drowning. Meanwhile, I'm sitting in Adams Energy's headquarters, signing my own contract. It felt different this time, like I was finally being valued for what I brought to the table instead of just being another employee in a suit. Patricia Adams was about my age and had built her company from scratch. She understood what experience was worth, what it meant to have someone who actually knew how things worked. "We've been watching your work for years," she told me. "What Lawson did yesterday was the best recruiting advertisement we could have asked for. Half our board saw that footage and said we needed to hire you immediately. The Adams deal moved fast because they knew what they were doing. No family drama, no inherited positions, just professionals who understood that compliance isn't optional when you're dealing with government contracts." Within a week, I was setting up my new office and reviewing their existing federal project portfolio. You know what's interesting? Once I started working with competent people again, I remembered why I'd loved this job in the first place. It wasn't about the politics or the credit. It was about building something that worked, creating systems that protected everyone involved, making sure the details were right so the big picture could succeed. Adams had been trying to break into the federal energy market for years, but they'd always stumbled on the compliance requirements. Too many companies treat government paperwork like a necessary evil instead of understanding that it's actually protection. For them, for the taxpayers, for everyone. I spent my first month there reviewing their processes and fixing the gaps. Nothing dramatic, just the kind of detailed work that makes the difference between winning contracts and watching them go to competitors. The same work I'd been doing at Lawson, except now people actually listened when I explained why things mattered. 3 months later, Adams Energy landed a $1.8 billion Department of Energy contract. Not as big as the deal Kate had fumbled, but substantial enough to put us on the map. More importantly, we did it right. Every signature in place, every requirement met, every safeguard properly implemented. The contract signing was different too. Professional, efficient, no unnecessary drama. Patricia Adams made sure to acknowledge the entire team, including the compliance work that made it possible. When the cameras rolled, she specifically mentioned the financial safeguards that protected both the company and the taxpayers. It felt good to be recognized, but you know what felt better? Watching the deal close smoothly because we'd done the preparation work properly. No last-minute surprises, no panicked phone calls, no executives scrambling to fix problems they'd created by ignoring details. Meanwhile, Lawson Energy was having what you might call a rough time. It took them 11 months to finally get their Pentagon deal signed, and by then they'd lost most of their original investors. Kate managed to keep her job, but word around the industry was that the board had her on a pretty short leash. Turns out, inherited authority only goes so far when you don't know how to use it. The best part? They had to hire 3 different consulting firms to rebuild their compliance framework from scratch. Cost them more than my entire annual salary, and it still wasn't as good as what I'd built over 19 years. Sometimes experience can't be bought no matter how much money you throw at the problem. Tom Andrews reached out to me about 6 months after everything went down. He wanted to apologize for not speaking up when Kate fired me, said he'd been kicking himself ever since. I appreciated the call, but honestly, I understood why he'd stayed quiet. Corporate survival instincts are real, and he had a family to feed. I should have said something, he told me. Everyone in that room knew what you'd built, what you meant to the company. But we all just sat there. Look, Tom, I get it. Kate was the boss. She'd just made it clear what happened to people who crossed her. You were protecting yourself. Still doesn't make it right. He wasn't wrong, but holding grudges is exhausting. Besides, my life had turned out pretty well without Lawson Energy. Sometimes the best revenge is just living better than the people who tried to bring you down. The funny thing about that whole experience is how it changed my perspective on loyalty. For 19 years, I'd been loyal to Lawson Energy because I thought it was the right thing to do. I'd missed anniversaries, worked weekends, sacrificed time with Sarah because I believed the company would take care of me in return. But loyalty has to go both ways. You can't give everything to an organization that sees you as expendable. Kate taught me that lesson the hard way, but it was a lesson worth learning. Michael graduated from state last spring and took a job with a smaller energy company in Texas. He asked me once if I regretted spending all those years at Lawson, missing dinners and family time to build something for people who didn't appreciate it. I told him the truth. I regretted missing time with his mother, but I didn't regret the work itself. Everything I learned there, every system I built, every safeguard I created, it all led to where I am now. Sometimes you have to lose everything to realize what you're actually worth. Adams Energy has been good to me. Patricia Adams runs the company like a professional operation. No family drama, no inherited positions, just people who know what they're doing working toward common goals. When we land a big contract, the celebration includes everyone who made it happen. When we face problems, we solve them as a team instead of looking for someone to blame. Last month, we closed another major federal contract, this one worth $2.3 billion over 5 years. The Pentagon officials specifically requested me for the compliance review, said they appreciated working with someone who understood their requirements. That felt pretty good, knowing that my reputation had survived the Lawson mess and even gotten stronger. The signing ceremony was professional and efficient. No drama, no last-minute surprises, no executives getting fired in front of cameras. Just competent people doing their jobs properly. Patricia made sure to acknowledge the entire team, including the boring compliance work that nobody wants to think about until something goes wrong. You know what I've learned from all this? Sometimes the best revenge isn't what you do to someone, it's what you do for yourself. Kate fired me thinking she was removing an obstacle to her success. Instead, she gave me the push I needed to go somewhere that actually valued what I could do. These days, when young financial officers ask me for advice, I tell them 3 things. First, always read the fine print because that's where the real work lives. Second, never underestimate the power of being the person who actually knows how things work. Titles and connections can get you in the door, but competence is what keeps you there. And third, loyalty is important, but it has to be earned and reciprocated. I also tell them about Clause 63. Not because I planned it as some kind of revenge weapon. I didn't. I wrote it because it was the right thing to do, because proper safeguards protect everyone involved. The fact that it ended up protecting me was just good planning meeting opportunity. The clause is still there, by the way, buried on page 63 of Lawson Energy's standard federal contract template requiring the signature of someone who no longer works there. They could change it, rewrite their whole compliance framework, but that would mean admitting they made a mistake. Kate's too proud for that, and the board's too invested in the idea that she knows what she's doing. So every time Lawson goes after a major federal contract, they have to work around the hole I left behind. It's not malicious. It's just reality. When you build systems properly, they don't disappear just because you do. I still drive past the Lawson Energy building sometimes when I'm in that part of town. It looks the same from the outside. Glass and steel reaching toward the sky, trying to impress people with its size and shine. But I know what's inside now. A company that values appearance over substance. Connections over competence. Adams Energy's headquarters is smaller, less flashy, but it feels more solid somehow. When I walk through those halls, I see my work reflected in how things operate. The compliance systems I've built, the safeguards I've implemented, the processes that ensure we do things right the first time. It's not glamorous work, but it matters. Sarah would have been proud, I think. Not of the drama or the public vindication, but of the choice to start over somewhere better. She always said I was too loyal for my own good, that I should stand up for myself more. It took losing her and then losing Lawson to finally learn that lesson. The contract that started this whole mess? Lawson eventually got it signed, but it took them almost a year and cost them millions in delays and renegotiations. The Pentagon wasn't happy about the complications, and word is they're not eager to work with Lawson again anytime soon. Meanwhile, Adams Energy has become the Pentagon's preferred partner for major energy contracts. We deliver on time, stay within budget, and handle the compliance requirements without drama. Turns out that's exactly what government officials want. Competence over flash, substance over style. Sometimes people ask me if I miss the old days, if I ever think about going back to Lawson. The answer is no, not for a second. I've got a better job, better colleagues, and better prospects than I ever had there. More importantly, I've got self-respect again. Kate taught me an important lesson that Tuesday morning, though I don't think it's the one she intended. She showed me that sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is getting fired by people who don't appreciate what you do. It forces you to find people who do. The clause on page 63 wasn't really about stopping a deal or getting revenge. It was about doing the job right, building proper safeguards, making sure the details were covered even when nobody else wanted to think about them. The fact that it ended up changing my life was just the universe's way of rewarding good work. And honestly, that's the best kind of revenge there is.